ready for our demonstration now. Demonstrator is Larry Miller. He's going to talk to us about alternate ways to hold material on your lathe. And Larry, I'm going to let you take it from here. Are you going to need any help lifting any of this stuff?
You can make anything you want out of any wood.
Had I known there was going to be this many, I would have actually prepared a speech. This is going to actually be more of a show and tell than a demonstration. Originally, this was supposed to be various types of chucks and what you can use them for. Chucks that are designed to hold specific types of work and so on. Well, that would have meant bringing a multitude of chucks down here, and if my shoulder ever gets better, I'll be happy to do that. But since I had my shoulder operated on, I can only carry any amount of weight with my left hand, and I am right-handed, so I've been kind of hindered in that. So we changed that to alternative ways of holding work, or things that many of you are going to know already about the things I'm going to talk about. I'm just going to make some comments about them that may be helpful to you or may not, depending. And I don't really know. I'm going to start with the screw chuck because I was going to make a comment about the screw chuck. This, as all of you know, is a Glaser screw chuck. This is one of the early ones. A number of years ago, my partner in California and I bought Glaser High-Tech from Jerry Glaser and are continuing to make his things. Something that we overlooked or did not realize is that Jerry Glaser never patented anything. And we assumed that there was some patent time on some of these things. And of course, Jerry passed away. Now, in my humble opinion, this is the best screw chuck available today. But I grant you I'm prejudiced about that. And the fact that it wasn't patented, in the event that you can't afford a Glaser screw chuck, if you look in craft supplies, you will discover that it has been copied. Not only has it been copied, but it is being sold for less money than we can manufacture it for. And we're manufacturing it in our own plant in Los Angeles. And we still can't compete. So, you know, there's honor among wood turners unless there's money involved, and then it's a no holds barred situation. So I do not know. All I have seen is the picture, and it looks exactly like this, except it's bright finish rather than dark as we are finishing ours. The important thing, and I can't really tell from the picture, the important thing is the pitch on the threads. Because to look at that, the first thing you would come to mind is the fact that that won't hold very well. It will hold extremely well. My favorite alternative way of holding wood is with a screw chuck. I use faceplates and I use regular chucks. But if I have the choice and what I'm working on lends itself to it, I use a screw chuck. Now, this being the older version, you only had two ways of attaching it. This giving you a little more base. We are now making a 6-inch on the new one. We're making a 6-inch plate. And on the new one, these screw on rather than slip on. So you can screw the small one off, screw the big one on. And that is the equivalent of a real good faceplate, in my opinion. Now, not everyone will want to spend the money to buy one of these. They might not even want to spend the money to buy the knockoff. In that event,
Larry, can I say something about that? That is a very well built one. That's the one I used for my turning here with the platter. I thought it was very well made.
well, they are well made.
They are.
In the event that you don't want to buy either, there are screws made that will fit your chuck. And you can virtually tighten any chuck up on these. This is the Vic Mark. Don't buy this one. This is the one way. Buy this one. As Jimmy Clue said to me, you got to do something really stupid to bend this screw. You drill a roughly an 11/16 hole and screw this in, and these are very good. What you have to do, well, you don't have to. It's very easy. This one has a shoulder on. The Vic Mark does not. Not that there's anything wrong with Vic Mark. I have 2 Vic Mark lathes in my shop, as most of you know, in addition to some other stuff. The nice thing about this one is that it will screw right down in there. There's a shoulder in the front and a shoulder in the back that's holding it. And you really...
Okay.
And it runs real good. There is a little bit of run out, and there might be a little more depending on the chuck that you're using, but really that's not normally a big deal in this case. They hold very well, and they are not at all expensive, and that is a good alternative to spending bigger money to get a glazer, even though I would love if every person here would buy a glazer. Yet tonight, I would love that, but I fully recognize that that isn't likely going to be the case. The problem with the Vic Mark screw is there is no support in the front of it. I have bent Vic Mark screws. Now here again, you gotta really be, you gotta really be, because it's not a bad screw at all. It just, in my opinion, is not as not as well designed as the one-way screw. With this and virtually any chuck, you have a screw chuck. The screw chuck there. Is there an advantage over, is the screw chuck better than the faceplate? Probably not. Probably at the end of the day, the faceplate is the most secure way to hold a piece of work when you're starting on it, when it's not balanced, and when you're going to be beaten around on it, You're only going to be touching the wood, for a little spot every revolution, and it's hard to beat a faceplate. But all of you know how to use a faceplate. I'm sure of that. If you don't know how to use a faceplate, anyone can give you the 3-minute course, and you'll be able to use a faceplate. The only important thing with a faceplate is the kind of screws you use to screw it down, in my opinion. And sheet metal screws of the size that fits your faceplate, I think, are the best. Okay, now we're going to move on to cold jaws. I do not like cold jaws, personally. All I'm doing here is giving you my opinion. The reason I don't like cold jaws is that I never get them set right. I take all the little things out. I look at my piece. I measure my piece. I look at the the blank and I say, well, it ought to go here. This is where it should go. And so I put them all in, and it doesn't fit. It won't hold the piece. So I take them all out again, move it down or move it up one hole, and then do it all over again. Now, I did that for years, and I became very frustrated with the thing because it just took a lot of time. And I get very impatient to get to the business of turning rather than setting up. There are two alternatives. I don't think the one is being made anymore. I'm not sure about that. The first alternative is this. I think it's a longwood. I believe it's longwood, and these are very cool because it doesn't matter how big your piece is within the limits of the jaws here. You can make it pretty much fit whatever size piece you have, down to and including about where are we? About right there. That's about the limit, which will hold a pretty small piece. And what you do is you put the thing in there, obviously, and then you turn these thumb screws tight to expand the rubber. Same as cold jaws. Same principle as cold jaws, except I can't really make a mistake. If it'll fit in there, then I can hold it. And you just clamp down on it, snug it up is all you have to do, and then tighten the thumb screws, and it'll hold pretty good. And these things are pretty well made. I have a couple of them. I have one smaller than this. A number of years ago at a symposium, there were guys selling this thing called Chuck and Duck. They make a small one and a large one. They are very, very good. The only thing about it is you have to grip it with that, and then you have to put this in here, and I don't even know for sure. I don't even remember. I haven't used this for a while. I do remember. But they get tight. They get real tight. In fact, they get so tight that you become a little disgusted when you have to struggle to get it apart. But they hold very well. I really do like them, and I do use them, but I'm not sure you can buy them. Now, that brings me to another point. This was a 1x8 because I had a small lathe, which I still have and which I still use from time to time. I had a small jet, and a couple of these lathes here I think are mine, and they all have a 1x8 spindle. But when I'm serious about it at home, I use a 1 1/4x8. So you can buy these adapters to change a 1x8 to a 1 1/4x8 or a 33 millimeter or whatever. You can buy various sizes. Let me say, these are not all created equal. You can buy them for $29.99, and you can buy them for about $60. You get what you pay for. I have a couple of the cheap ones. I thought, I'm going to save myself some money. I got it on, and I wondered why it was running out. And it was running out. I put dowel calipers on it, or I put a dowel indicator on it, and the run out was significant on the cheaper ones. So my recommendation in this case would be, you don't need a lot of these. In fact, you only need one. But if you have some 1x8 chucks that you want to use on a 1 1/4x8 or whatever, you can use one of these. I recommend that you only really need one because you can change them. You can take it off of here and put it on something else. I don't, I recommend really strongly that you pay the extra bucks and only buy one. See, I was going to get one for everything I had, but I didn't want to spend that much money, so I bought some of the cheap ones. Didn't work out that good. Oh, they'll work. You can use them. But if you're really serious about them running true, it's best to buy the better one. And I think Beal is the company that sells the ones that I have discovered are true and have an absolute minimum of run out. And you will find that that I think you will be more pleased with that. Then there is the matter of you need a size you don't have. No matter what. You go through all the jaws you have sitting around. You maybe put a couple of them on the chuck and you discover they don't work, and you just, what do I do? Well, pretty much, not exclusively, the rest of what I'm going to say here is some of the things that you, or talk about some of the things that you can do. This is the first one. I think these are $7 or a little, maybe $7, $8. These are for the Nova, and these are for the Sorby Patriot chuck. Now, if you don't have a Nova chuck, well, if you don't have one, I don't know why you don't have one. In my humble opinion, a Nova chuck is the best bang for the buck in the chuck market. That's my personal humble opinion. For the money, I don't think you can beat them. And I have a couple of these on hand, and I was doing something that I required, I required just the right size here to hold it, and I wanted it to run true, so you just turn this to however you want it. Put it on the chuck, put the chuck on the lathe, and have at it with a skew or a gouge or whatever. You can try, it turns really easy. But yet it is fairly substantial material. And it will, and you can get more than one use out. Now, I won't get much more than one use out of this, although I still probably have a ½ inch in there or close to it. I have at least 3/8 down there. I can turn this flat, and then I can turn myself another, another shape that I need to hold something. Nice thing about these is that they are gentle on your work. They don't mark unless you leave some sharp edges. That will mark the work. But if you just turn it, if you just turn it to whatever you need, and you can use them if you start. They're this big when you start, and you just turn away as much as you need for that particular project. Now, if it's a project that you're going to do over and over and over, then set these aside and get another one of these if you need to do something else. Because if you're going to do repetitive work, I don't do much repetitive work. Production turning is not my thing, but there are people who enjoy making the same basic thing over and over and over again, and I admire them, and they usually get very good at it. I don't do anything long enough to get good at it, and so I get bored with it and go to something else. I have found these very useful, as I have found the Nova chuck to be very good. Now, I have quite a collection of chucks. Those of you who have been in my shop, Bob's back there laughing. There's no way. Well, with the pickup, I guess I could bring I could bring all of them down here to show you. And if we ever do that demo, which chuck to use for which job, we're going to do it in warm weather. We're going to open that door and back the pickup right up to the door, and we're going to work out of the pickup, because there's no way a person can lift, even with a good shoulder, can lift all those chucks and carry them on in here. Jim offered to carry the chucks in for me, come to the house, carry them out, bring them down here, go back to the house and carry them in. I said, Jim, let's just wait a little and see if we can't come up with something a little better, and wait to see if my shoulder heals well enough that I can lift things with that. Most everyone, and are there any questions to this point? Because I'm going to go on for a little while yet, and if you think of something, I'd be happy. Just break in. This is not my idea. This is Bill Fordney's deal, and I'm not sure if it's unique with Bill, but most of you have a one-way live center for your tailstock. And it's very neat. In fact, I think maybe Bill demonstrated this here. I'm not sure. 3/4 inch nut will screw right on a one-way live center for the tailstock. But you don't have to use it in the tailstock. If you get yourself a roofing nail, cut it off to the length of the hole, put it in there, and put it, don't forget this, put a piece of tape over it so it can't come out. You can use it as a drive center by putting it in your Morse taper, screwing one of these on it. Now presumably you've glued a piece of leather or something that will give it some bite on there, and you can move your piece right up against there, you know, and then bring the tailstock with another center up. And I find this very useful if I'm finishing a foot and I don't want to hold the outside rim, or can't hold the outside rim for one reason or another. It may be that I have it all sanded, ready for the final finish, and I don't want to take a chance on scratching it, or I may have it partially finished, and I don't want to take a chance on marking it. And I'm very anal about finishing. I really, try to get down to the magnifying glass stage and look for marks and things like that. And I shouldn't be. My wife says I'm too much that way. Who's gonna care? I've seen people at symposiums going through the gallery, with a magnifying glass. Looking down in there. If you intend to show in any juried exhibits, there's a chance that's going to happen before your work is accepted or juried into the show. That somebody will need to see how carefully you finished it. So my wife says, "Oh, it's great. Nobody's going to notice." Yeah, but I know it. So this is a way to turn it to get at the foot. There are other ways, of course. Now, if you're going to turn a platter or something like that, you're going to turn the foot first. So you're going to have a faceplate, a screw chuck, or something like that in here, and you're going to turn the foot. Then you're going to hold it by the foot, and then at the end, chances are you might have a little bit of handwork to do. just to mention that when you're holding something in a chuck, while I'm on this, when you're holding something in a chuck, like this is a one-way, your optimal point on those jaws is when you have roughly a 1/16 of an inch gap. That is when they are the most concentric. So if you have to open them way up to hold the work, okay, you with me? These corners are very likely going to mark your work. So unless you have a large collection of chucks, and can use a number of foot sizes, you know, you need, when you have it on the screw chuck and you're turning the foot, you are well advised really to have only about a 1/16 of an inch in there, or thereabout. It doesn't have to be dead on that, but it needs to be close to that if you want to avoid marking the work. Now, sometimes you don't care. Platters and things like that, I tend to expand into the piece of wood rather than squeeze down on it. It's just the foot style that I like personally and that I use. If you're going to cut it away when the work is done, then, you know, turn a tenon and just, you know, squeeze down on it and have at it. And then when you're done, you have to turn it around. You have to hold it in some fashion and remove that tenon. A good way to remove that tenon is to use a deal like this. Bring your tailstock up, and then you have just a little teeny bit of handwork at the end. You usually have a little handwork anyway. Let's face it, if you really want to get that foot looking good, normally there's a little bit of handwork to do. So when you have this nail in here, and it's, I'll take it out. Well, I'll try to take it out. It's just a roofing nail that I cut off so it wouldn't go all the way through, and then blunted the end on the grinder, so because it stuck out just a little wee bit and I didn't want to be catching my fingers on that. I catch my fingers on enough stuff as it is, and you find the little hole where that goes in, you push it in there, and if you're going to use it in the headstock, be sure you put a piece of tape over there. I customarily put the tape all the way around and several layers. That way I'm really sure that nail isn't going to come out, and this will drive the work. And it works very well. And for some scrap wood, a little bit of leather or foam or felt or whatever you have laying around, and the cost of the 3/4 inch nut, you can make yourself all kinds of shapes and sizes of this so that you can just, you know, you can hold down really, really fine with it. Little piece of leather glued on there with a little contact cement, and when that piece wears out, and it will, just pop it off and glue another one on. And you save yourself tons and tons of money for making up little special, you know, tools to drive with. Of course, another option, and this too is not mine, this is also Bill Fordney's. In fact, he was written up in American Wood Turner for this. Is this water tubing, you know, water pipe. It comes in all kinds of sizes, and you buy a foot of every size so that you can fit every chuck. Now, these were not designed for this chuck. In fact, I just cut these out, but what you do, obviously that is much too big. But what you do is you put it over your jaws, okay? You get the right size, and Bill already demonstrated this, although not all of you were here when he did it. And you can clamp down on something and not mark it. And they run pretty true. And they hold really well, providing you have the right size. Never use a piece that big. I was using a piece of this size tubing for something else. It had nothing to do with wood turning. And so I just cut up a couple of these to bring along to show you. Actually, I couldn't find the ones that actually fit those jaws. They're somewhere, and will someday show up again. I'm very sure. Another way to hold work, of course, is with double-faced tape. Now, let's talk about that. Do not go to Lowe's and buy double-faced tape to hold work on a lathe. Please don't do that. There's nothing wrong with Lowe's double-faced tape for hanging pictures on the wall, you know, or doing things like that. But their double-faced tape is not going to work on the lathe. You will go to Packard or Craft Supply or one of those and buy double-faced tape that is made for wood turning purposes. And you all know how this works. You put something on here, you put the double-faced tape on it, you peel the other side, you peel the paper off, you stick on what you want to turn, you bring your tailstock up against it without the drive center in, of course, and you put some pressure on it and you let it sit for a little bit. Don't be in a hurry. Consider it the equivalent of 5-minute epoxy. Let it on there for 5 minutes, then have at it. And if you've bought the right tape, it will work very well. Now, you can't, tape up a 12-inch bowl. Not designed for that. No reason to do that. And it's going to go flying. But for smaller work, for making, I think maybe Barb demonstrated making pendants and used double-faced tape. And it's wonderful. It is great stuff. And you have a sacrificial piece that you're using, and you can just turn a little fresh edge on it, use it over and over and over again till it's nothing. And then you get yourself another piece and turn it to whatever shape you need, put your double-faced tape on, and just keep on going. This stuff is not terribly expensive. Now, it's going to cost you more than what you buy at Lowe's or Home Depot, or Ace Hardware. And here again, there's nothing wrong with their double-faced tape for what it was intended for. But it was not intended for turning wood. Don't use it for that. Ask someone who's been there and done that. Way back, I heard about double-faced tape, that it was great. So I hauled out to Lowe's and bought me a roll of it and taped up a piece I wanted to turn, and as soon as I touched it with the tool, it went flying. So experience is a good teacher. And you wanna buy the good stuff. Believe me, you wanna buy if you're gonna use it. And I use it. I use quite a lot of it. I usually when I get down to about there, I'll order another roll. I have some that has been sitting around for several years, and it still works. A little skeptical of it, but it does still work. Another option you have is hot glue. Now, being lazy that I am, I have one of these benzomatic things. You fill this up with you know, with the fuel, and you heat it up. And hot glue, I like hot glue. Hot glue works good if you do it right. And the right way to do it is you don't put it on there and then go answer the phone, you know, or go get a soda out of the refrigerator and then come back and stick your piece on and expect it to hold. You put it on while it is still wet. And here again, don't be in too big a rush. Put it on, put a little pressure on it, either with your hand or in the lathe or with a clamp or whatever, and give it a couple minutes. And if you do that, it will hold good. Nice thing about hot glue and double-faced tape, it is relatively easy to separate the pieces after you're done. The double-faced tape, I think, is a little easier to get off than hot glue, but hot glue has many uses in wood turning, and and you use it in cases where you want to separate the pieces. If you want them to stay on there forever, you use CA or epoxy. Being impatient as I am, I use a lot more CA than epoxy. But either of those will hold for a long time, and will hold very well. Now I wonder where the Tommy bar is that we get there. Do you just back this thing up and get it out? Oh yeah, you just back it up and get it out of there. That's simple enough. That's not mine. I'm going to put it up here. You all remember where I put it when we need it the next time. The last thing I'm going to talk about is making your own chucks. And you do this by tapping the wood. You can buy taps, again from Beal, in any size. That is, any spindle size. 1 by 8, 1 1/4 by 8, 33 millimeter, what have you. I think they even have 1 1/2. I'm not absolutely sure of that. But you can make yourself a chuck that will screw right on the spindle, and then you can do whatever you want with it. Obviously, it won't expand or contract, but for making jam chucks, this is awesome. I usually have a bunch of these made up. The one thing about it is you have to make it to fit your specific spindle. Like this one will not fit right on that one because there's no relief here for that little lip back of the spindle. And you also have to make it the right depth. I'm going to try to show you how to make one, and then with the word of advice that you need to look at the spindle on your lathe before you have at it, so you know how you have to relieve it or countersink it or whatever you have to do. Now I'm going to be way over where I should have that chuck. I realize that, and I'm sure you realize that, and I'm going to tighten it down really, really good. And you all know when you know there's at least 2 holes in your chuck. That means you're supposed to use 2 holes. If there's 4, it means you ought to use 4. They're there for a reason. It isn't just, well, that's the convenient one, so that's the one I'll tighten down on. That's not the point. The point is you want to get it tight. And so I use them all. And this is probably now tight enough, but I don't want it to go away. So I'm going to make sure that I have it tight. This we don't need, so we're going to put it up here and hope that it's out of the way. A keyless chuck for your tailstock on a Morris taper is really handy. Now, these are really cheap. They have them at all the symposiums. They're not the best in the world, but they work okay. If you want to buy a really deadly accurate one, you're gonna put a Century Note Plus out for a really accurate one. But these work okay. Well, I think it will. There, it got reasonably tight. Y'all know what these are. If you don't have one, get one. It's a machinist starter or countersink or whatever it is. They come in various sizes. Lots of places sell them. MCS sells them. Eco sells them. Any place that sells machining type stuff sells them.
Larry, can I just put in terms of getting that whole square for the pens? That's what I start. Any pen blank, I start with one of those and put the drill in it.
Yeah, I do the same. Yeah.
Anything is a standing rule. Center drill, drill tap. Center drill, drill tap. And we use that for this. Let's see how we're going here. We don't have to be going real fast. We might have to get a little closer though. So all I'm doing here is drilling a starter hole for the drill. That's all I'm doing. And I want it in the center. It doesn't have to be in the center, but I want it in the center so that when I turn it around and put it on the lathe, it will be in the center. So we're going to take that out. Now, this tap for 1 1/4 by 8 calls for a 1 1/8 inch drill. I use a 1 1/16. It means that it's going to fit a little tighter. It's going to be a little hard to get on and off, most likely. But it's also going to be solid when I'm finished. So the next thing we do is drill it. Center drill, drill tap. Center drill, drill tap. Don't forget that. I'm going to use a Forster bit. This is a good one. So this is one of the German jobs. So it doesn't wander. You know, Forster bits tend to wander. I'm sure all of you have had experience with that. Those of you who make salt and pepper mills have used these a lot, and you've probably discovered that again you pretty much get what you pay for. And I have a few in sizes that I use on a regular basis of the good ones. Bormax is very good. Colt is very good. I don't have a complete set of those because that's serious money. You don't want this thing running too fast here when you're going to do this, so we're going to slow it down here a little. And what we're going to do is we're going to drill this out. You see it jump a little? Probably could be going just a hair faster. Now, how deep you drill it will depend on your spindle. You have to measure your spindle. I'm not gonna take the time to do all of that. So we're going to stop right about there. That's not going to be deep enough for this spindle. but it will be deep enough to show you what I'm intending to do. All right, we've center drilled, we've drilled, now we're going to tap. That's my air gun. These things are really sharp. I like to keep them that way. Okay. Now we're going to tap this. Oh no, I don't want that. Come on, Larry. You know better than that. We're going to go back and use this thing. The little hole in the back of these. Okay. We put this back in here. That little hole will help you get it straight. And we're going to put it in here. We're going to lock this down, for now at least. Someday I messed with my wrench after I did this at home to make sure I could do it. Haven't done it for a while.
You want some help there, Larry?
I think we'll be all right. I think I'll be all right. At least, well, I'm going to have to get it started a little better. See, I under drilled. I under drilled it.
Oops.
No.
Not right.
No. We'll have to ease it off. There we go. All right. There we go. A little more. Put a little more pressure on it. Start it in there. I think we're okay now.
John, on the back side of the video camera. Just step around the back of it.
Okay here?
Yep. Wait till I find the lock. Now we're going. On my lathe, I can swing that all the way around. Should have brought a shorter.
Where else brought your lathe?
Yeah, I didn't think about that. Could have done that. Now, if you're brave, you can do this under power. Or if you're stupid. I have to confess that if I'm doing like a 1/4 inch, 5/16.
Okay.
Now we've bottomed out on this. So now we're going to bring it back out. Now I customarily run this in a few times. It's okay. You can take it on back, John. I'll just bring it on. I'll just run it out. I'm almost to the point
where you could use reverse.
Yeah, this is where you use reverse. Just pull that back out of the way. Not quite.
Okay, when you're going in, you don't break threads as you do in metal, or not?
They're not real pretty.
They break chips?
Yeah, they're not real pretty threads, but they work. I would run that in and out a few times, and then in this case I would smooth it up a little bit here. Now, what you have to do, depending on your spindle, is you may have to turn a little recess in here. Okay, we'll see. It's not going to go all the way on this spindle. I know that already. But I will show you that it will work. And I should have threaded it. I should have threaded it a couple times.
have to assume, especially with the shoulder on it, you'd be better off to go deeper than
Yeah,
more shallow.
yeah, yes, yes. You need a bigger piece of wood, well, or a thicker piece of wood. Actually, that's not too bad. But you see there's a little shoulder here on this spindle. You would have to recess this a bit. I cross-threaded it. There we go. There we go. That's fairly straight. We didn't clean that one up enough. This is one I did at home. You turn that on there, and well, yeah, one of the reasons is, see, there's no, I didn't countersink this or counterbore this at all. And I should have counterbored it. If you counterboard, it'll go on dead straight. Now on my lathe at home, it went right on. But these, the pitch in these things, even though they're all 1 1/4 by 8, there are slight differences in them. And you'll figure out which it is. And I also drilled the hole a little small, so it's a little tight. I probably should have used the recommended size of 1 1/8 instead of 1 1/16. But it's going on there straight now. We won't go any further than that because it isn't going to go all the way back over. Now, to get you to this is what I was trying to do. Now you have a lot of things you can do. Double face tape will hold, hot glue will hold, or you can turn a jam chuck. That's primarily what I do. Is I thread this on here and then I turn a jam chuck with it. You say, well, you know, that's a lot of waste because you can use a faceplate or a screw chuck or anything to hold it to turn a jam chuck, which is true. You're very right. The only thing about it is, if this is big enough, I can get a number of uses out of this, and I haven't tied up my screw chuck or whatever. Or even you can even hold it in a regular chuck and make a jam chuck. But this I can use a number of times, and I have the rest of my stuff free. Now this is assuming more than one lathe, that you're using more than one lathe, and that isn't always the case. But you can take it off and you can reuse it. It's not something I do a lot, but I do when I need jam chucks. And if I know I'm going to be doing something repetitively, which I rarely do, as I already told you, then I would recommend it as an alternative. I don't see any more goodies on the table, so I'm going to open it up for anyone to ask any questions, if they have any. And if they don't, it means one of two things. It means I either explained everything so well that you understood it completely, or I did it so poorly that you couldn't begin to understand well enough to ask a question. So I will assume the latter if there are no questions. That's simply for my own ego that I'm doing that. Aha.
Not a question, Larry, but another type of jump that I make occasionally is one where you turn the Morse taper on a piece of wood and just put it right in.
I know people do that, and I have never had much luck with turning Morse tapers.
The trick is to measure a metal Morse taper at a specified two spots, say 2 inches apart, and then that's what you set your wood at. And you just screw it up and
Yeah.
cross it.
That's simple.
That makes a lot of sense. That's simple. It just doesn't work right for me. But you are right, and that is a legitimate, which I have heard a lot of people talk about. Bob?
I have a comment. Teaching a class, I was using hot glue and I was having the kids glue a platter on the faceplate, the wooden plate to it. And I looked over and one kid had it looked like the pyramids in Egypt, you know, like this, and he could never get the piece to balance because it was too lumpy. You know, so when you're using the hot glue, you got to make sure you got a smooth layer because if you get a bump in there, it's going to be a wobbling
Oh, yeah.
mess. And
Oh,
it was
yeah.
so funny. I
Yeah.
let him finish it to try it because one of these kids, you had to show him, hit him with a 2x4 from the survey.
Yeah.
But it really showed it that the rest of the class at all. You can't do that. But he was having fun with that glue gun. He was just going around and around and around.
Yeah, hot glue is not my favorite, but it will hold a bigger piece than double-faced tape. So that it is an option that you have. Although when I get that big, I usually tend to screw chuck or faceplate or something like that to hold it. You can use double-faced tape on a faceplate if you have the courage, and so on. Lloyd?
You didn't mention using Elmer's or Type Bond in newspapers. Is there a reason for that?
No, I didn't mention that is because I don't do it, but I know people do it and do it successfully. I have never done it. That doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with it, and if I understand it right, you put a piece of newspaper between your pieces or yeah, it has to be newspaper or something that the glue will go through between your pieces, and then you separate it at that spot when you're done. Is that correct? That's my understanding, and I know people do that. I have never done that. For no particular.
Glue has to go on both surfaces.
Beg pardon.
The glue has to go on both surfaces.
Both surfaces. You glue both surfaces. Okay. Put it together, and you have to let it. Give it some time. How much time do you have to give it before you?
I give
I leave it
24 hours.
overnight.
Overnight.
You know, when we had the demo from the other professional who did the crazy baseball bats and all that, and I can't think of his name. Spheri. All of his stuff that he demonstrated for us that day was glued with paper. All the pieces he took apart and put back together 10 times.
But he brought it here glued.
Already glued, yes.
Yeah.
When they say inside outside turning, you usually use paper for that.
Oh, okay. I don't do that. I've seen it done. I love it. I think it's fascinating. It also.
Apparently, so there's a more even break the whole way through.
It
Okay.
comes apart
Or
easier.
just comes apart a little bit easier.
Oh.
You
Thought.
can use craft paper as well.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's craft paper is a little stronger than newspaper.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of people use brown paper.
Okay.
Right, yeah.
I use brown paper bags, but that's a 3500 sanding grit for me. Because my sandpaper generally goes to 2500, and then I go to a brown paper bag. But that's another subject for another time. Anyone else?
I've used carpet tape instead of double-sided tape.
Oh, mm-hmm.
It comes a little wider and it sticks.
Didn't know that, and that works? Good.
It's
Carpet
easier to
tape.
come. It's easier to come by.
Yeah, okay. Is that available? Where is that generally available?
hardware store.
Is that the thick stuff?
Yeah.
Why is it about that thick? You gotta be careful with that stuff. It will come apart. I mean, it'll separate internally, but
I haven't used anything like that.
I've seen it, I've done
Here,
it.
that's the foam.
Yeah.
No, this,
Yeah.
he's not talking about foam.
No, mine's just
About the same thickness as this.
about the same thickness as this, only it's wider like that.
Wider.
You can get it at a
Yeah.
carpet store, you can get it.
That's one of the problems with this. You're doing a big piece. I mean, you cut it, and if it's round, you waste some always at the edges. And while it's not frightfully expensive, they don't give it away. And so that's an alternative that I had not known about.
The carpet tape, is that self-sticky?
Yeah, both sides are
It's
sticky.
just like, yeah. Some of it's got fiber in it,
Oh,
crisscross fiber.
is that better? Is the fiber better than the?
It's hard to go off once you stick it on tight.
Okay.
It's just that there's sometimes, it's easier to go to the hardware store and get something than to wait for it to come from.
Agreed. If there is something that is, yeah, I agree. Anyone else?
Larry, you mentioned that Nova chuck and also that faceplate, that you could actually turn that? Or did I misunderstand?
This?
Yes.
Yeah, I turned, this was this before I started, when it came UPS. Yeah, when UPS dropped it off at the door. I turned this for a particular project I was working on. I don't remember what it was, but I turned that.
Fit that project.
Beg pardon?
You turned it to make it fit that.
Yeah, I turned it to make it fit the project that I was working on. Yeah. Anyone else? Thank you all. It's been great.